also about tools that we can use for planning fencing systems.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. So one of the things I brought today is something that's a little bit different. There have been staplers that existed for the past couple of years. Ones that required gas cylinders. There's ones that required where you had to be connected to your air tank or pressure hose and use about 120 psi and drive steeples. So hammer is going to be about $25. If you get the pneumatic kind, it's going to be about $250, about 10 times the cost. And the other one, Stockade, has one that's going to be significantly more expensive. This is one that DeWalt's came out here recently. It's for 9-gauge steeples. So, and these could be up to, I think, up to 2 inches, I believe. And so these are about inch and 3/4 here. But I find it's fairly handy. I've got this probably about 2 weeks ago. So I haven't used it and figured out what all is going to go wrong or if it's going to be really resilient. It's, like I said, about $700. So depending on the cost of your hammer, it could be 20 to 30 times the cost of your hammer. But if you're putting up barbed wire, or if you're in a place where getting out there with an air tank or RTV might be a little difficult, this can save you a little bit of time and hassle. And plus, when I was growing up, Dad always said, I'd be out there helping with fence, and we had the whole family out there because you stretched the wire and everybody had to go pick a post and have at it. But he said always hammer like lightning. It's like never struck the same place twice. And so, this solves a lot of issues. I think you just go through there as fast as you can say 1, 2, 3, 4, it spins up, and then you're ready to go. So it's got a multiple mode. So that's just something, the only reason I talk about it is just because it is different. It's the one that actually just requires, a battery pack as opposed to requiring an air tank or requiring a gas cylinder and also a battery. So it's kind of been a simplified version. But I just thought I'd tell you about it. Saw it the other day. I'm going to give it a try. This is on my personal farm because we do over, it seems like 2 miles of fence every 2 years at least, or more. So at some point, it's about speed and efficiency, getting out there and doing what you can. So I just thought, let you know about that one. I found it on Ken Cove. I think Home Depot has it. Just internet if you're interested in that kind of product. But it does, like I said, the steeples. I didn't say this. The steeples. So normally your steeples are about 4 cents a piece, and so for this system, they're about 8 cents a pop. There's other ones like the one I was talking, the pneumatic kind. They've gone down in price. They used to be about 8 cents. They've actually gone down to about 6 to 7. Sometimes you can find them for 5. Just depends on where you're looking on the different sites. These are, it's a DeWalt stapler, so let's take the DeWalt steeples. I try to use the other ones, and you have to do some modifications. So something to think about. But if you're looking for at some point, your labor force, because I had took the whole family out there, and eventually they all rebelled on me saying we're not doing fencing. So now it's just my brother and I with this tool, and we're able to do a lot more fencing fairly quickly. And it's something, if I had my sister-in-law, she's using it. She's about yay tall, and she can go to town with it, and doesn't have much recoil either. So just something I thought I'd throw out there as an option to make your lives potentially easier. But it's going to come, it comes with a cost. But if you're looking for a speed, UK plays football games, basketball games. I don't want to miss them all just because I'm out there fencing. So, I work, UK, do what I can, and I have to come home and do my fencing on the weekend. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time doing. So at some point, that trade-off, you have to make that estimation. So I was talking about innovative fencing technology. So that's something I really like. We'll see how long it lasts. I could come back here next year and say, man, it broke, and I was blah, 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 blah. I'll let you know how it goes. But Chris talked about what I'm going to try to cover is the mapping, monitoring, and tracking technologies, and then get into some of what Jeremy alluded to, was the fact that we have virtual fencing. So that could be something that's in the future, and the technology is there now. It's just refining it. So online measuring and mapping tools. So what I typically utilize would be Google Maps is kind of my first go-to, quick. If I'm looking at boundaries, if I'm measuring something, even calculating an area, I can go to Google Maps fairly quickly. Kentucky-based maps is another really good map that I'll use for estimating perimeters and also area. And then Ag Site Assessment Tool by Missouri site, which gives you a lot more information than some of those. But a combination of those. So with Google Maps, it's fairly quick, easy to use. Just pull up Google Maps, and then you'll right-click. So a lot of times I say right-click, and you'll bring up a list of choices. And way at the bottom it says, what is here, and so that'll give you latitude, longitude. So usually if we're trying to find a certain barn or working with producers or the agents, they'll tell me, well, you go out past here, go out past here, past the Smithers barn, then turn right at the gravel road. I'm like, which one is the Smithers barn? So which one? So this can sometimes help if you say right-click and you say, here's the latitude, longitude. Let me send that to you. Give them that location. So sometimes that can help if we're trying to do some farm visits. Just right-click, send us that, and I can know exactly where to go or where to meet you. Other thing you can do is, another thing, it's hard to see, but it says measure distance. So you actually just go through, click along the perimeter, and it'll tell you as you go along how far your fence line is going to be if you're planning to do some fencing. I typically use this if I'm doing fencing, water line, just to get an estimate. How many rolls of wire, how many posts I'm going to buy. I don't even go out there. I kind of walk it, but I usually just use this and say, it's been fairly close for the most part. I mean, if I'm doing millimeter precision, yeah, I have to do some totem, get some RTK systems. But if it's general, nuclear units, I'm just out there. I'll use this. So if you actually enclose a circle, it'll tell you the area. If you go on and click off of that, it'll remove it, but just give you the distance. But for the most part, I think it's a good first tool if you're trying to do some estimation on boundary fences. Just get a decent measuring tool. So the pros is quick and easy. Cons, we can't really save the information. We can't really utilize it easily. Or we can't really do multiple pastures at once is the issue. Another one I really like is Kentucky base maps. So Kentucky base maps, it'll bring up, and I think they might be Geospatial Gateway now, but Kentucky base maps, if you search for that in Google, it'll bring up this. And so you can go through there, and it'll actually, you can right-click on your location. You go through these tools, so you can either measure a line. If you just want to look at a fence boundary, you can look at that. If you want to look at both, you can use the polygon tool. Draw around the field edge, so you just click and draw around the field edge, select your color, select your units. So if I choose acres, feet, whatever it may be, miles, it's all right there for you to utilize. So it gives you a little more information than Google Maps would. Google Maps only gives you feet or meters. So a little more options. Like I said, you just click. Once you click and select your shape and color, what you want to show, it'll give you that information there. So it'll tell you it's hard to see, but tells you how many acres, how many feet is the perimeter of that field. Another option is you can change colors, and you can go that. It's just a quick, easy tool. If I'm trying to get some just generalized information, I might keep one of these printed out for my hay fields, so I know exactly what's going on with my hay fields. Like this many acres, I'm planning to lime and fertilize. I got that where it's quick and easy to reference, print it out. It's just something you could utilize. Again, it does have some limitations. One of them being, again, we can't really save this, and it's not really an exportable format. I can't get a KML or KMZ files or shape files as well. But it's another tool that we could utilize if I want some quick information for my fields for distance or area. Another one is the Ag Site Assessment tool that gives you a lot more information. So this is Mizzou's information. So it gives you a lot more. So it gives you data, centroid, the hydraulic summary, some of your soil summaries, environmental, temperature, and other aspects of that region. So it will give you a lot more information. I guess it does give you some of the 30-year annual rainfall, the soils up there, karst topography, hydrology summaries, how many streams are potentially in the area or nearby. So it gives you a little more information. It's kind of one of those general overviews. If I'm looking at a property, just thinking about it, I might go here first and then go to Web and Soil Surveys, get a more detailed analysis if I'm looking for the soil summary. The wind, it does give you the wind rows, but the wind rows, typically the wind rows are for 30 years. This one's only for 7, but it still gives you a general idea of what you can expect for wind direction, wind speed and magnitude, or direction. Ag Site Assessment tool, another neat tool is you can get if you want to click and try to get individual locations or points, it will give you that information as well. Latitude, longitude, your UTM zone. If you're communicating stuff with engineers, sometimes those can be fairly important. It can give you some slope, so it might be a 10-meter or 3-meter to 10-meter digital elevation map. So it'll try to give you an approximation for slope. So if there is a difference between this field, where your valley, how's your fence going to look? If you're putting in a water, especially if you're going up a hill, pumping for that or determining that amount of head or calculating the head, if you have a pump, help you size that pump as well. So at least help you get an estimation of how large of a pump you need to get the water all the way up the hill. And so you can also get your area, get the other aspects similar to the other maps. But again, it's limited. These are really good. If I'm using a quick tool, these work fairly well. However, the one I prefer is probably Google Earth because it's free to download. It used not to be free. Now it's free to download. And so it allows you to save some information. So if I draw a quick map, or I can import and export polygon shape files, I can do some conversions in different programs. But the online version, I will say, is not as useful. I've tried it, and it just doesn't give you as many little features. So I think download it, put it on your computer. It's not really that much of a, well, it's not going to really challenge your RAM, I don't think, that much. So there's two main file types, KML, KMZ. I guess the KMZ just allows you to throw pictures in there. That's all it is. And the other one just gives you the typical shapes you see in Google Earth. So the KMZ just gives you additional options. It's whatever you want to do on that one. I always just save in KMZ just due to the versatility. So I can throw in pictures if I want to of something happened at this date. I might throw it in there and have it. And so, main types of data, it's going to be points, lines, and polygons. But, what we're going to do with that is, in this case, it might be hard to see, but we can draw out our field boundaries. I want to put in my waterers because maybe granddaddy put in the water line or daddy put in the water line. Some of that institutional knowledge, everybody's getting older, and that might be getting ready to disappear here in a couple of years. So knowing, recording and knowing where everything is can be important. Whether it's water line, underground power lines, whatever it may be. That can be important, and sometimes there's apps you can use to record, a basic GPS if you're walking a line. At least for Android, I'm not sure about iPhones. We use it as well. So one of the things we can do with this is we can actually share it with different producers or different extension agents and specialists. So if you have a farm, you're figuring out how to split up your farm. This can be a tool where we say, okay, you have fields that aren't quite equal, which is fine, but where's our water? Our water location is the main restriction. And when we're trying to do our rotational grazing or plan our pastures, knowing where to put the water is the most important aspect. I think Steve Higgins has a new publication about that. But it's fairly easy to organize if we are sharing it. So I usually have everything by folder and by year. I'll say for 2020, 2019, then I'll have for each farm, I might have my Brown Road farm, my home farm, if there's different farms, locations within that farm, have them in subfolders. So I try to organize as much as possible. And it's fairly easy. You just right-click on your farm. If you want to export the whole map, share with your extension agent or share with your specialist, that can be done with Google Earth as well. So give them an idea of what's going on, what challenges you're facing. There are ways to add information, so you can actually save some information. If I have my acres, my pasture ID, if I have applied phosphorus or my soil samples, sometimes I'll put those in there as well. As another way, I'll have my piece of paper I got from the extension office, but I'll also put it into Google Earth just so I have it there and can look there and say, okay, I applied this much lime. Is there any trends to my soil? So it's just another way. It is additional data input, but I also have that data there, which should be there relatively safe and permanently. This is where you can add the pictures. If I'm adding pictures of Richie or something, you can add pictures of some site or incident or maybe some hazard that could be at that location as well. So monitoring. So we talked about monitoring, or they talked about it a little bit, and so that technology has gotten a lot better. And like you said, we can now track with our phone, and so we have a lot more options. It's sending us text messages, it's sending us emails, it's allowing us to communicate. If there is a fault in the fence, how do we go? So then it becomes, how much is that information worth to you? It's more of a peace of mind thing, because we're trying to figure out, okay, I can go out there and test it. If the cows are out, well, obviously I'm a little too late. So it's trying to prevent issues before they happen. So some of that is just you're paying for that peace of mind, or you're going out there and checking it. So how often do you want to go out there and check it? And I remember back in the day, it was just you got a piece of grass, you tested it. So that's what you did. Or if you were lucky, you had a little brother, and you told him, if you hover your hand right above it, you feel it, and they hover, and then you just push them into it and see if it works. You can only do that once or twice before they get mad at you. So it's the cattle are always going to try to go where they think the grass is greener. So if you have them, usually we're trying to do rotational grazing. We're trying to do even just keeping it in. If we don't not doing rotation, keeping it on our farm. Sometimes they'll see that grass on the other side and think I should be over there. So they're always going to try to pretty much call your bluff. So if it's not working, if it's off for an hour, you're probably fine. But at some point they will figure it out, and once they do, it's over. So knowing, if you get that Gallagher box, which can tell you, through text message or other means, it can be some peace of mind of where the problem is, what's occurring. Is a big problem, small, how much of voltage drop are you seeing? So that can be, and can tell you, like I said, doing different sections where that problem could be occurring. One of the things we're also trying to utilize a little bit is some drones for monitoring. There are certain restrictions, regulations, because we're flying for commercial purposes. This is checking cattle, whatever it may be. So, if we're looking at that, we have to take a knowledge test to fly a drone. You can fly a drone recreationally, but I think it really helps to have this knowledge test to know, is it safe to fly where we are? For the most part in Kentucky, this is true. It's generally safe. It's within if you're within 5 miles of an airport, a tower at an airport, that's when it becomes an issue. And the drone, whatever it is, must be registered with the Federal Aviation Administration. That's good. I think it's $5 per year is pretty much the registration cost for a drone. There's multiple sizes. It's kind of like a pickup truck. If you want to spend next to nothing or a whole bunch of money, it's up to you how much you want to spend. So this kind of just shows you, like we have the Bluegrass Airport there close to Lexington. It takes up a pretty good chunk of 5 miles. It goes all the way into Lexington itself. So it's 5 nautical miles from a towered airport. Non-towered airports, it's different restrictions. But whatever happens, if you're the drone operator, it pretty much says it's going to be your fault. Remote pilot and command, it is your fault. So trying to, knowing exactly what to do can be important for flying a drone. And so if we're evaluating fence lines, in this case, we're looking at some high tensile fence line out of the beef unit, but they actually had dairy cows out there. We're trying to see, can we see the fence line? Checking waters, checking the feed. Using this as a tool to check fence lines and monitor animals. Looking for wind damage as well, so we can actually set up flight paths. So there's a couple of different programs we can use. Drone Harmony is one. You can use it with Ground Station Pro. DJI Ground Station Pro is another. I think if you have Apple, the DJI Go app will actually allow you to do some waypoint allocation as well. So, there's multiple apps. Trying to find where there's problems. Set up different routes if there's a big wind event, or especially in the spring, or if we have an electric fence in the fall, the deer rut can be an issue. They get excited and they just run through an electric fence like it's not even there. So, or single strand, or poly tape. So really, with that, we're just trying to avoid these. If we can maintain visual line of sight of the drone, really we're just trying to open a whole lot of gates. I tell farmers, if we can stand there and just watch it fly, and then also check the animals, see where are they. Ideally, at some point in the future, we'd be able to automate this. But the way the current restrictions are, we have to maintain visual line of sight with the drone. And some of these, they can fly fairly fast. You can go out there if we want to see what the cattle are doing right now. This is a problem we have. Man, the past 3 years, it's been, I think, was it 3 years ago? We had 10 inches of rain in February. I think it's 2 years. Past 2 years, it's just been wet from December on, I think. And so, mud's being an issue. If we're going out there and checking cattle, we don't have to maybe traipse as much. The cattle's still out there in it. This problem has been solved with a feeding pad. But still going out there and quickly and easily checking animals can be performed with the drone. So it's kind of one of those new technologies. Still exploring, not quite 100% sure on, but we can get from that point there to the back of the farm, so about a 72-acre farm within a minute. So it can save you a lot of time if I'm trying to find animals. That drone was looking back that way, then straight down. There are the cows. I'm already at the back 40. If they're in the trees, though, we can't see them. So that's still a limitation. We have to be somewhere in the field where we can actually at least see around the fence line or see in the field. Best time of day to check them has probably been about 7 in the morning to 9 o'clock in the morning to depending on the day in the summertime, and also in the summer, I guess sometime after 5 or 6 when they come out, we can see, okay, there's a group here. We have 19 of 20. What's number 20 doing? Do we need to go find her? So it can be a tool to utilize. Some people already have some as a toy, but we're trying to figure out how to use this as a tool. As far as I mentioned it a little before, for fence line monitoring, we can set up waypoints, so GPS location, where we recorded latitude, longitude, and the angle of the camera and altitude to pretty much go and take a picture of this section of the fence. I'll just take pictures all the way, this field all the way around the perimeter of the fence. So I'm just looking at it, trying to evaluate, go, take the pictures, fly, come back and land, evaluate them later, say, or I record video, either one. Just trying to change my elevation as well. A lot of times, I will say with the software, it's going to assume, so a lot of the softwares will assume the ground is flat, and that's, for here it's not too bad. We're out in East Kentucky the other day, and so we had to really stress, go out there, fly it, record the actual elevation and actual points, and then put that into and use that for subsequent flights. So go out there, record it yourself, fly it, record it, and then you can use that for every subsequent flight. And so you already know exactly what you're looking at if that's really what you want to be analyzing. So, if we do have a storm event, I set these up for water gaps. I'll set it up to look at water gaps, my fence lines, which I think are going to be a higher proportion of ash trees, I think are going to be a problem. I had that fly that route as well. So this could be something that could be utilized as a tool in the future. And, it shows you there kind of the angle of the camera and what it's going to be seeing. But like I said before, fly it, and you'll know exactly what you're looking at. So, what we're talking about, the E shepherd collar. So you show that picture of the cow with the GPS collar. So what it has is the GPS unit, and it also has a solar panel on top of the neck. And so it's taking in that sunshine to power the unit, communicate with the GPS, so it's getting the GPS signal, and also communicate with the base station. The base station communicates with the cloud and your smartphone. So you tell, I want the cow to stay within this area. And so as soon as she starts getting out of that area, it'll give her a beep. And so you've hopefully, working on training the cow. So it's almost like an invisible fence for cows. It's going to beep and beep until she gets to the point where she's gone a little too far, gives a little zap. And so it gets her turn. So like he said, if we're somewhere, where it's fencing or maybe even interior of a farm, so we still following all of Clint's laws, because I had a guy ask me, it's like, well, we still got to do what Clint says. A safe and sound fence is still 4 foot tall perimeter fence, and so do whatever Clint says on that part. But I was like, once you have that, if they're inside that farm, this could be a tool for in the future. Maybe we don't have to go out there and put all our steeples up and do everything, mess with rotational grazing. If we can just utilize technology to help us rotate a farm, or have this rotate for us. And so this is where we're going to get in the future of, we have all these devices communicating together and synchronizing and using that. So they've done a lot of this tests over the past 3 years, New Zealand, Australia, and trying to get that technology over here to test and utilize here in the United States. So this is something we could be going to in the future. And one of those things like, is it here yet? Is it here yet? But it's not quite commercially available as of yet. So we're getting there. But with that, oh yeah, and so other thing we're trying to do with was also some like almost Terminator-esque, where we're trying to identify this. Oh yeah, see, it's got the Terminator music. So identify the cows. So identify the cows in pasture, and so we were, if there is an issue, if somebody has pink eye, can we identify who they are and where they are? And so then send that information to us later on. So this one I was always told, like, one of these is not like the others. So with that, are there any questions?
It's been a long morning. We appreciate you hanging with us. Josh, I'm sorry for putting you last on the program.